Welcome back, Wealth Tubers. Today, we're diving into a crucial topic that could affect your wallets: Trump's economic plans and how experts say they might worsen inflation. While he promises to tackle rising prices, many economists warn that his proposals could lead to even higher costs for everyday Americans. From tariffs to immigration policies, we'll break down the potential impacts of these plans and what they mean for your financial future. And don't forget to subscribe for more insights. So, let's jump in and unpack the facts. Donald Trump recently made a bold promise, saying that if he returns to the White House, inflation will vanish completely. It's a statement aimed at frustrated Americans still feeling the impact of rising prices, which started over 3 years ago. But is that even possible? Most mainstream economists say it isn't. In fact, they warn that Trump's proposals could make inflation worse. His plans, which include slapping huge tariffs on imports, deporting millions of migrant workers, and trying to influence the Federal Reserve's interest rate decisions, a group of 16 Nobel Prize-winning economists issued a warning in an open letter. They argued that Trump's ideas could reignite inflation, which has already dropped significantly since it peaked at 9.1% in 2022. It's now nearing the Federal Reserve's target of 2%. These economists aren't the only ones concerned. The Peterson Institute for International Economics, a respected think tank, recently predicted that Trump's policies, if fully implemented, could cause inflation to jump sharply. Their analysis shows that inflation, which might otherwise be at 1.9% by 2026, could spike to anywhere between 6% and 9.3% under his proposals. Now, to be fair, many economists also criticize Vice President Kamala Harris's economic agenda. For example, her plan to combat price gouging is seen as unlikely to bring down grocery prices in any significant way. But unlike Trump's, her policies aren't considered particularly inflationary. Economists have run the numbers and found that Harris's policies wouldn't significantly change inflation, even if Democrats controlled both the House and the Senate. On the other hand, an unchecked Trump would likely push inflation higher by over 1% in 2025. While Trump's promise to vanish inflation may sound appealing, most experts agree that his policies would likely do the opposite, driving consumer prices up rather than down. Consumers end up paying for tariffs. Taxes on imports, tariffs, are Trump's go-to economic policy. He argues that tariffs protect American factory jobs from foreign competition and deliver a host of other benefits. While in office, Trump started a trade war with China, imposing high tariffs on most Chinese goods. He also raised import taxes on foreign steel and aluminum, washing machines, and solar panels. He has still grander plans for a second term. Trump wants to impose a 60% tariff on all Chinese goods and a universal tariff of 10% or 20% on everything else that enters the United States. Trump insists that the cost of taxing imported goods is absorbed by the foreign countries that produce those goods. The truth is that U.S. importers pay the tariff, and then typically pass along that cost to consumers in the form of higher prices, which is how Americans themselves end up bearing the cost of tariffs. What's more, as tariffs raise the cost of imports, weaken competition from foreign products makes it easier for U.S. producers to raise their own prices. This dynamic leads to higher prices across the board. There's no question that tariffs are inflationary, one expert noted. Exactly how much, that's where economists can debate it. The general consensus remains: tariffs tend to drive prices up, both directly and indirectly, by allowing domestic companies to increase their prices without the pressure of foreign competition. The inflationary impact of tariffs can depend on how consumers react to higher import prices. Do they keep buying the costlier foreign goods, whether it's a coffee maker from China, a box of Swiss chocolates, or a car made in Mexico? Or do they shift to an American-made alternative, or stop buying such goods altogether? Experts have calculated that Trump's proposed 60% tax on Chinese imports, combined with a 20% tariff on everything else, would result in an after-tax loss of $2,600 a year for a typical American household. Trump has made some implausible claims regarding protectionist policies. When asked how he would lower grocery prices, a significant concern for many Americans, Trump suggested limiting food imports, arguing that America's farmers are being decimated by foreign competition. One expert pointed out, "It's sort of nonsensical to say that I am worried about high food prices, so I want to put a tax on food imports. As you tax them, the food in the grocery store absolutely gets more expensive, A huge proportion of food consumed in the United States, about 60% of fresh fruit and 38% of vegetables, are imported, according to Department of Agriculture data. Less than 1% of the bananas Americans eat are grown domestically. The vast majority are imported. The United States grows less than 1% of the coffee it consumes. It imports more than 70% of its seafood. Trump is using tariffs as a political tool to signal his skepticism about globalization under his America First agenda. One expert noted that while this policy stance is inflationary, it's difficult for most voters to grasp, especially when they are being told the opposite. The Trump campaign points out that U.S. inflation remained low even as Trump aggressively imposed tariffs as president. Consumer prices rose just 1.9% in 2018, 2.3% in 2019, and 1.4% in 2020. And they note that, once in office, the Biden-Harris administration retained most of Trump's tariffs. In his first term, President Trump instituted tariffs against China that created jobs, spurred investment, and resulted in no inflation. But the sheer magnitude of Trump's new tariff proposals has vastly changed the calculations. In 2018 to 19, Trump's tariffs impacted just over $300 billion in mostly Chinese imports. Now, he's talking about tariffs on over $3 trillion in imported goods across all countries. The inflationary backdrop was also radically different during Trump's first term. Back then, the Federal Reserve was primarily concerned with raising inflation up to its 2% target. However, the economy's unexpectedly strong rebound from the 2020 COVID-19 recession led to severe shortages of parts and labor, unleashing inflationary pressures that had been dormant for decades. Amid economic shifts, Trump's stance on immigration takes a new turn.
Trump to reverse immigration surge.
Trump has pledged the largest deportation operation in U.S. history, targeting millions of undocumented immigrants. This comes after a recent surge in immigration, which has made it easier for businesses to hire workers, helping to cool inflation by reducing wage and price pressures. Immigrants, while spending less than native-born Americans, have been essential in filling workforce gaps, especially with many baby boomers retiring. The Congressional Budget Office reported that net immigration reached 3.3 million in 2023, helping the economy generate jobs without overheating. Mass deportations proposed by Trump could push inflation up by 3.5 percentage points by 2026, disrupting the current balance. Economists argue that increased immigration has contributed to a soft landing for the economy, helping to avoid a recession. With growing political pressures, the Federal Reserve's independence to combat inflation is at risk.
Politicized Fed may hurt inflation fight.
Trump alarmed many economists in August by saying he would seek to have a say in the Fed's interest rate decisions. The Fed is the government's chief inflation fighter. It attacks high inflation by raising interest rates to try to restrain borrowing and spending, slow the economy, and cool the rate of price increases. In March 2022, the Fed initiated an aggressive series of rate hikes to combat the worst bout of inflation in 4 decades. From a peak of 9.1%, inflation has dropped back close to the Fed's 2% target. Economic research has found that the Fed and other central banks can effectively manage inflation only if they're kept independent of political pressure. That's because raising rates to fight inflation typically slows the economy and sometimes causes a recession. Politicians generally prefer that the Fed not raise rates, the result of which could imperil their re-elections. As president, Trump frequently hounded Jerome Powell, the Fed chair he had chosen, to lower rates to try to juice the economy. The perception that the central bank was dancing to a president's preferred tune would compromise its ability to raise interest rates when it believed that to be necessary in order to combat inflation. The Peterson Institute report found that appending the Fed's independence would persistently increase inflation by 2 percentage points a year. While Trump promises to make the foreigners pay, the researchers concluded in their Peterson report, our analysis shows his policies will end up making Americans pay the most. Thanks for watching, WealthTubers. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember to subscribe for more content that keeps you informed and empowered in your financial journey. Until next time, stay savvy.